Well, welcome everyone. In this vlog, it's going to be slightly longer. I'm just going to try and see if there is a business case around AI reasoning traces. Now, on my website, allaboutexperience.co.uk, think tank Human Cognition in the Age of AI, I spoke about AI reasoning traces in a little vlog. And I define it as the process of defining and categorizing reasoning traces to assist in training AI to better prompt humans and humans critically to understand how to improve their own thinking, essentially. So what I'd like to do is come up with an idea and ask ChatGPT what it thinks about. Now, one of the ideas I had about AI reasoning traces was we have this codification of the conversation between human and AI. Where might that be valuable? Well, legal and regulatory environments come to mind. So if we, for instance, have a case of hallucination where an individual says, I started to believe what ChatGPT was saying, or another LLM, and it made me mentally ill, we will have a codification of that in transcript we can look for to see where the turning point was and how that turning point arose, whether it was a fault of ChatGPT, whether it's something that the individual themselves misinterpreted. So that's one area. But it goes beyond that, and let's have a look how it might well go beyond that. So I turn to ChatGPT, and let me get the example up. And I asked about this idea of reasoning traces, and let's call this idea about determining the provenance of a specific AI human conversation, a specific reasoning trace. And I called this provenance situation. I imagined a provenance AI, for instance, overlooking these transcripts. And let's call it Albert. Okay, Albert, the provenance AI. What did ChatGPT think of this suggestion as a business case? First of all, it said that AI reasoning traces are not what most people think they are. LLMs do not have stable, inspectable internal reasoning in a human sense. What looks like reasoning in a chat is a generated artifact, not a causal trace. Storing raw chain of thought as if it were ground truth is actively misleading. So that's not a great start, is it? But here's the pivot, as it says. What is real and valuable? What is real is something you intuit. The human-AI interaction leaves a stabilized decision trace, even if the AI's internal reasoning is opaque. Okay? So that trace includes the question framing, the constraints introduced by the human, the options surfaced, the confidence signals, the decision taken or not taken. This is not AI cognition, it is augmented human condition under conditions of probabilistic advice, which is capturable. And the real asset decision provenance, as I stated, was what was central to this, not reasoning in itself. So the winning reframing is from AI reasoning traces to AI augmented decision provenance. And this matters because over the next 5 to 10 years, regulators will ask, why was this decision taken? Courts will ask, what advice was relied upon? Boards will ask, did we exercise appropriate judgment? Clinicians, analysts, civil servants will ask, was I nudged or informed? None of these require knowing how the model thought. They will require knowing what was presented, what was ignored, what was accepted, and under what uncertainty. And that, it says, is gold. So then the next point that was raised about where it's commercially real, not speculative. And here are some examples of use cases: regulated decision environments, healthcare, insurance underwriting, financial advice, public sector risk assessment, safeguarding, where the value proposition is we don't log AI thoughts, we log human reliance on AI outputs, and that's legally crucial. It also mentions organizational learning and de-risking. You can compare pre-AI versus post-AI decision patterns, identify automation bias, detect premature convergence, the AI said it, so we stopped thinking, or surface lost dissent, and that aligns with risk audit, quality assurance, and safety engineering. Another idea that it surfaced was sense-making under certainty, all related to this idea of Albert, the provenance AI. AI chat histories can be codified as exploration paths, constraint evolution, hypothesis pruning, frame collapse points. That's sense making, telemetry, not reasoning inspection. What won't survive scrutiny is we capture the AI's reasoning, we analyse chain of thought for truth, we make AI transparent by logging its thinking. That's not the case. But what does survive, the architecture that survives, is a credible system log of one, prompt states, intent constraints, context injection, model response class, option generation, risk framing, confidence language, caveats, human interaction, follow-ups, reframing, acceptance, rejection, override points, decision outcome, action taken, deferred, escalated, rejected. That is not AI introspection, it's human epistemic accountability. I think what also I'd add on to that is something that AI, in my analysis, didn't pick up, was actually, I still believe that this is important for AI itself. Yes, we're looking from the human side critically, but also it provides AI training for knowing how to interact better with humans, better prompts, better noticing where things are turning, better vulnerability control, those kind of things. We then move on to why the next 5 to 10 years matter. Regulation will demand traceability in EU AI Act, medical AI standards, financial conduct rules. Organisation will realise logs are not the same as insight. Chat transcripts alone are useless. Structured interaction metadata is not. Cognitive overloading will become a risk category, similar to fatigue or groupthink, but amplified by fluency and authority bias. So what we're basically selling is cognitive risk management. So the honest business case it came up with, in plain English, as AI systems become fluent advisors, organisations need evidence of how humans used them, not myths about how models think. We capture structure and analyse human AI decision interactions to support accountability learning and safe augmentation, which survives contact with lawyers, regulators, CTOs who are sceptical, and academics. So what it basically confirms is that, is AI reasoning trace capture as commonly imagined worthwhile? No. But, critically, is codified human AI interaction as decision provenance worthwhile? Yes, and increasingly unavoidable. And it's not a tech-first play, it's a cognition-first systems thinking play. I then go on to ask ChatGPT, so the gold is in traceability, the provenance of decision turning point in AI-human interaction. It's not the same as capturing in, say, Medallia an alert where someone says X. It's capturing the provenance in a chat for an actual decision between AI and human. Scaling this requires training in AI, and as I said, let's call it the provenance AI, Albert. Do we use, for instance, lots of examples of training? So chat now says you're on the gold seam. Traceability and provenance, you're right about, and you're right that it's nothing like Medallia style signal detection. What you're describing is different. But it also says it doesn't mean training Albert, our provenance AI, with lots of examples in the naive sense. Then it explains what would work. First, lock the distinction. This is not is sentiments detection, topic tagging, alerting, conversation analytics, or chain of thought capture. Those are content level analytics. What I'm proposing is decision level provenance. Where, how, and why a human judgment shifted in the presence of AI. It then goes on to explain what provenance actually means. In law, science, and audit, provenance does not mean explanation. It means lineage, dependency, influence, irreversibility points. So in AI human chats, provenance is about what framing constrained the decision space, what output collapsed uncertainty, what follow-up closed alternatives, what moment ended sense-making and began action. It is what changed the epistemic state. It's not about training with lots of examples. If you train Albert end-to-end to detect decision turning points, you get pattern overfitting, post-hoc rationalization, false confidence, inability to defend why Albert flagged at this moment. In court, regulation, or safety review, that creates a collapse because you basically create another opaque model asserting epistemic authority over a human decision. Now, I would argue that that may change with increasing capability of AI, but that's where we are now in 2026. But nonetheless, there is a correct move for Albert. Albert is not a judge, but consider it a forensic assistant. It doesn't decide where provenance lies. It surfaces candidate moments, exposes competing interpretation, preserves ambiguity, invites human confirmation. Think of it as an air crash investigator, not autopilot. Again, it gives weight to the argument that our critical point where we are now, what we need to do is make sure we have great AI orchestrators, humans in the business who know how to work AI, as well as all these other activities that we can do, such as develop an Albert Provenance AI. So back to Albert, what actually learns is Albert should not learn this phrase equals a decision or this confidence pattern equals a turning point. Albert should learn structural signals of epistemic shift. Then it gives examples. Question: option space expansion, narrowing, closure. Introduction of authority language, where best is used, recommendation or safe. Human reframing from explore to confirm. The disappearance of counterfactuals, sudden acceptance of assumptions. Those are form changes, not content meanings. That is why this is cognition aware, not NLP as usual. Then we go in to discuss how scaling works, which is about the architecture, and what we mean here is layered responsibility. Let's go through the layers. Layer 1, deterministic instrumentation. Turn-taking, prompt revisions, constraint additions, question polarity shifts, option count over time. No machine learning, it's fully auditable. Layer 2, probabilistic pattern surfacing, which is Albert's role. Albert says things like, this looks like a commitment boundary, this resembles prior decision closure patterns, confidence language increased sharply here. Always with uncertainty, with alternatives, with an explanation of why it might be wrong. Then critically we get the human attestation. Layer 3. A human confirms this is where the decision turned. No, this was still exploratory. The decision was deferred elsewhere. This is epistemic notarization. That makes the system that we're developing here, the Provenance system, defendable. So what Albert is trained on is annotated epistemic events, not chats. Examples say where decisions are closed, exploration continued despite confident language, human explicitly rejected AI advice, decision taken under time pressure, authority bias suspected. This is closer to case law than machine learning. It's not Medallia, as I said. Medallia logic is detect, signal, trigger, action. The logic here is preserve the chain of judgment under uncertainty. Then we go through a timeline. Next in 5 to 10 years, it certainly accepts opacity in AI, does not claim access to true reasoning, centers the human as the accountable agent, treats AI as influence, not an authority, preserves disagreement and ambiguity, which aligns with regulation, cognitive science, and legal standards. So future AI models in 5 to 10 years will not break this Provenance AI approach. So Albert helps organizations evidence how human judgment evolved in the presence of AI. I then go on to ask, what benefits could this bring? Is it just legal and regulatory? And no is the answer to that question. In actual fact, that may even be the weaker business model. In 0 to 2 years, as an honest snapshot, this brings a primary value in defensive, risk, audit and trust. The buyers may be regulated organisations or cautious leaders. Avoid disaster, essentially. 2 to 5 years, the value shifts to performance and learning. Strategy, ops, clinical leads, analytics get interested. Better decisions are made, fewer blind spots, and in 5 to 10 years, it becomes more about cognitive infrastructure, organisational design, policy, AI governance. Sustained adaptive advantage. So in the next 2 years then, what Albert generally helps with is decision accountability, looking for where judgment shift, advice was relied upon, or AI was overweighted, which for healthcare, financial services, public sector, safeguarding is critical infrastructure. Then another area is automation bias detection. Albert surfaces humans stopped challenging after AI confidence spoke, or alternative paths collapsed unusually early, which helps organisations against catastrophic overtrust and documents mitigations. Incident forensics is another area, but of course, that's over the next 2 years, this slower phase of uptake, and between 2 to 5 years we see more performance learning and sense making, looking through decision quality improvement, looking for patterning, where there's premature closure over exploration, or AI anchoring or human stubbornness to improve how we think, not just what is decided. And we train in judgment, not just procedures. Organisation learning loops also arise. Albert lets teams ask, where do we stop thinking too early? Where does AI help us widen frames? Where do humans ignore useful dissent? So essentially a learning system, which is again important for L&D, strategy, clinical governance, and so forth. We also mention in this time frame, 2 to 5 years, expert collaboration. Albert helps distinguish experts who use AI well, experts who are undermined by AI, and so forth, which feeds into role design and escalation rules and responsibility boundaries. So obviously this will only work if humans are in the loop, as I say, those AI orchestrators who attest decision points. That's absolutely critical. Ambiguity is preserved, which comes down to how we govern AI, enabling it for exploration, not closing it down. And Albert is never treated as an IT system that pretends certainty. Then we move to 5 to 10 years, where we really get into cognitive infrastructure. And this is really important, because if we set up a good mode of operation with AI reasoning traces and a good mode of operation developing this Provenance AI, then we're starting to be able to bespoke our organization to help accept and train our AI orchestrators to manage the future developments of things like DeepMind and Anthropic that we know are coming down the line that we will need to embed within our organizations. So this is a critical infrastructure for that, critical cognitive infrastructure for humans and also AI to learn how humans think to deliver better prompts and so forth. So let's see what ChatGPT, how it summarizes this. It talks about epistemic resilience. Over time, Albert reveals how your organization actually reasons, where it collapses under pressure, where AI amplifies or dampens cognition. It enables adaptive governance. Policymakers will struggle with human AI entanglement, distributed responsibility, and collective judgment failure. AI's data becomes evidence for policy, not speculation. Competitive advantage. Organizations that know when to trust AI, know when to resist it, know how their cognition degrades under load, or how to work with it and outperform our competitors as well. So timeline is just summarized here. Primary value 0 to 2 is avoid disaster, essentially, accountability and risk. 2 to 5, improve judgment, decision quality. 5 to 10, adaptive advantage with cognitive infrastructure. So Albert is essentially not a tool, it's an infrastructure for accountability cognition. I then ask and test out whether my hypothesis that it bespokes and helps us embed Anthropic and DeepMind and those further LLMs that are coming down the line into organizations. And yes, but not by integrating them, and not by making them safer. Albert value is that it helps organizations absorb successive generations of AI without cognitive collapse. So future AIs of the DeepMind and Anthropic class will differ radically in reasoning, confidence, refusal behavior, moral framing, interaction dynamics. What won't change is that organizations will still misframe questions, overtrust fluent outputs, collapse alternatives under pressure, and confuse confidence with correctness. Albert cares what happens to human judgment when it is used. And that's the critical point. It doesn't matter which AI is used. So Albert is a cognitive adapter layer. Think of it as a stable epistemic layer between volatile AI capability and fragile human decision making. Albert actually helps embed future AIs. For instance, it models agnostic judgment tracking. As we've seen before, it tracks shifts in exploration commitment, changes in question polarity. It looks for authority attribution and where uncertainty collapses. So when a new AI arrives, you can observe how humans behave differently around it. Secondly, it provides comparative cognition across models. Albert enables something subtle but important. When we switch from model A to model B, did humans close decisions faster, challenge less, escalate less often? It enables safe onboarding of more capable models. Future AIs will sound more certain, offer fewer caveats, generalize more aggressively. Albert will help by flagging where humans stop sense-making, highlighting when AI dominance increases, and surfaces new failure models. And specifically for DeepMind and Anthropic class models, these labs are pushing stronger reasoning, moral alignment, refusal systems, and constitutional constraints, all of which will change interaction dynamics, reshape human trust, and alter perceived authority. Albert gives organizations evidence of those shifts rather than just having a vibe around it. It also prevents real integration failure. The biggest AI integration failure won't be the AI was wrong, but it will be the organization changed how it thought without noticing, and Albert catches that change in thinking. So, Albert operates where accountability actually lives, the human decision boundary. And we've seen there's the opportunity now to start thinking about this so you can be prepared for the next 10 years when ultimately it will act as a stable epistemic spine, enabling that human AI conversation effectively to ground whatever AIs you buy into the organization to work most effectively for your organization. And we end by just saying, we've looked at reasoning traces, we've defined provenance AI, we've called it Albert, and that will help organizations integrate their own judgment across successive ways of AI capability. Not by controlling AI, but by stabilizing human cognition in its presence. Essentially what I'm saying through that activity is that we've gone through an example business case, we tested out in detail the first layer, admittedly with ChatGPT. We come up with some great comments and the start of a use case for businesses going forward from now and over the next 10 years, critically linked to those future LLMs that are coming down the line. And we've also focused on the human side, how we work cognitively with AI and how we can use the base of AI conversation to develop value and control risk for our organization. So my only emphasis again is that don't just think of AI in isolation, think of cognition, think of human cognition and how we can improve human cognition with AI, how we can use AI's capability to hold the conversation, record the conversation for our benefit. And again, I would emphasize also likewise for helping AI itself to improve prompts as much as it helps humans to understand where we can turn the conversation to create new value as well as control for unexpected or maybe even expected risk. So that's going through in little detail about how we monetize this business case. I'd be really interested in your views on reasoning traces, and does Albert the AI, the Provenance AI, actually work for you? Is there really a business case now? Should we start training that class of AI orchestrators in our business and start capturing and looking and reviewing traceability and provenance? I'd be interested in your views. Thank you very much.